Well, hello once again, metrology enthusiasts. Welcome to the Metrology Today podcast. Joining me as always this season, my co-host Henry Zumbrun. Henry, thank you for
Hola.
joining me once again. And a familiar face to those of you that have been following the podcast for a long time. This is going to be no stranger to you. The owner of CalLab Magazine, CalLab Solutions, metrology.net, Mike Schwartz. How are you doing,
Hey,
Mike?
thanks for the intro.
I think that was a pretty good intro, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The guy
So
that walks around a lot at NCSLI.
yeah, and that's kind of what this is about. So this is a little bit, arguably a little bit late with 2 weeks out, but this is a NCSLI conference preview, which the conference will be taking place the 6th through the 11th. Mike, is that correct? Correct me
Yep.
on those dates.
Yep.
Yes,
Those are the
yes.
correct dates.
6th through
Yep.
the 11th of July, and it will be there well, it's at the Gaylord in Colorado. Is it in Denver?
Yeah, it's in Denver. It's I don't know, about a half a mile, three-quarters of a mile from the Denver airport.
Oh, nice.
So those people coming in, Gaylord doesn't do shuttles. So, but those people coming in can just grab an Uber or a taxi and get over there real quick.
Yep.
Gotcha. Now, gentlemen, I have a theme today, if you don't mind, because been doing a lot of traveling the last 2 years, really. And when I go to commercial labs, I think those are the most underrepresented when we're talking about attendance at the conferences. But arguably, I think those are the people that can gain the most from going to a conference. And I specifically mean I deal with a ton of managers now that are young, ready to take on the world of metrology managers, but like they're trying to convince the management of their company or the owner of their lab or whatever to let them go to these conferences. So that's what I want to focus on, is like this is beneficial to not just the government labs that show up, but like everybody. So with that in mind, who
Yeah,
wants
it
to
saves. I'll step right into this. It saves you a ton of money. Okay, so you think about management, you think about the measurements you're making. Not everybody knows how to make these measurements. We throw untrained technicians that we think we've trained into the pool and say, go do it. Well, year one, right, they're still making mistakes. They're supervised. You can have training programs, you can have everything else. What NCSLI and the metrology conference actually does, besides offer tutorials and a chance to go around and talk to people, is exactly the talking to people. The networking aspect of NCSLI is if you meet people, you put a face to them, you have discussions on, oh, I calibrate this. And then typically anybody at those booths that are there, anybody that are at those shows, as soon as you start those discussions, you realize you're doing like measurements. However, the seasoned people and the professionals will give you tips and tricks that you're probably missing when you're only like a year or two into it. So
Mhm.
the just ability to network, I cannot stress enough. I've written so many papers over the years that Mike's been nice enough to publish some of them with CETA, and all that comes from being able to network with different people. Hey, I'm not sure of this. I'm 95% sure. I don't want to put something out that's, has a 5% chance of being wrong. So then the other contacts that I happen to meet at through NCSLI will, review it. And we all share and review and network and talk about problems with the industry, which sometimes then comes on and we talk about on this show, like metrology, the Metrology Today podcast that we're on now. So I think these organizations, and there's very few out there. If you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously listening interested in metrology, and
Mhm.
there are only two conferences really out there that are going to get anything um, for you, in my opinion. There might be others. I haven't seen them. There's specific dimensional shows and there's specific other shows. Though these are it, and NCSLI is typically the bigger of the two shows. And that one is, if you can convince people, there's still flights open, there's still rooms available. The tutorials have been filling up with pretty good numbers this year, better than what they were pandemic levels and better than what they were last year as well. But there's still seats available. So if you want some of the training of the tutorials to come network and meet people and get the tips and tricks and figure it out. I mean, I've learned so much from just talking to people at Fluke, Adatel, all the other booths. Morehouse is going to be there if you have force or torque questions. Mike's going to be there with CalLab Solutions. Ryan's going to be there a little bit, and Mike, you
Well,
want to take it from there,
well,
Ryan?
Henry, I was gonna direct a question to you. Could you
Sure.
imagine running the commercial side of your lab or any part of a calibration lab in some sort of bubble where you're insulated from
We
everyone and you don't go out and see what the latest things like the papers and what everyone's talking about? Like how can
w-
you stay up
okay,
to
we would
date
be
otherwise?
we would be very lost, and I know that is factual. Because I think prior to NCSLI and meeting my contacts in 2010, I think we were doing things well, though that just things like we've learned through, and you learn through audits too. I mean, most commercial labs will learn from their auditor. They'll learn from the people that they come in pre-audits. If you have somebody that's good in quality, maybe they're a member of ASQ. There's other ways. We would not be as good. I've learned, yeah,
Mhm.
there's so many things that you learn to do as far as the statistics of metrology, as far as how long should it be till I calibrate my reference standards. So we're specialized in force. I think that piece we had down, but sometimes people send things in that need ratiometric measurements. We are so much better from the shows and just talking
Mhm.
to Fluke, talking to Agilent, or now Keysight, talking to those people, attending those seminars that they put on. You learn things that it's like that's a secondary function, but it's so primary in the fact that if we get it wrong, measurements can be off by several percentage and no one knows. So I think we're
Yeah.
better on running the Flukes, running the Agilents, cleaning filters, general checking internal temperatures, all of this stuff. I mean, we knew we had to clean filters, but I never knew on a Keysight 3458A that we should be checking the internal temperatures. That's one of those little tidbits that could bite you in the rear big time if you don't know it. And now people that work on that side, like Mike, of course he knows. But you have the thing is you have those discussions. If you're just making a certain measurement and you have all those secondary functions, you may not know these things. And that's where getting out, talking to people, how does this work? How do you measure it? What's your PMs? How do you calculate your measurement uncertainty for these devices? Can you all, going in right to metrology.net, can you automate it? Is there a way that you can save money by getting more automated data capture, less risk of error from, taking numbers or transposing numbers, all that fun stuff. So
Yeah.
lots of solutions out there, and you see what everybody has. Maybe you're making a measurement that's just absolutely silly, and you're such in your bubble that you have no idea that having two people hold something while somebody else hangs weights on something else is a bad idea.
Mm.
Um,
Well,
right?
you
When
know,
there's a machine that can do it, that can save, that turns a 3-person calibration job into a 1-person calibration job. And now, labor's hard to come by these days.
it is.
So,
Well, and Henry, I mean, it's a great point. You don't know what you don't know until you find out in
no,
some ways. Mike,
no.
I apologize. I cut off that Henry was passing it to you. So,
Yeah.
what do you have to say about the
Well,
conferences?
what I was gonna say is the biggest thing and the biggest reason to get out there is the training, the tutorials that
Mhm.
are available at NCSL and Measurement Science. The first the first 3 days are gonna be largely tutorials, and there is a ton of tutorials: high voltage, intro to measurement uncertainty, risk-based thinking. There's if you just go out to ncsli.org, you can click on the main banner and you can get over to the daily schedule and see all the training. It's way more than that I can go over in the podcast of how many people are teaching what. But the first 3 days of it is just training. And back in 2019, we did an article in CalLab magazine, the advantages of coming out to these shows. And instead of, us writing it, what we did is we reached out to everybody in the industry and said, what did you get out of coming to these shows? And one of the best ones that we got back was from Jeff Gust. And he said he wouldn't be where he is today had he not attended all these NCSLs and MSCs and sat through these tutorials when he was a young metrologist. and got all of that training and knowledge. And, now he's the corporate metrologist for Fluke, and he's doing his weekly on LinkedIn. If you follow him, his weekly,
Metrology Mondays.
Yep, Metrology Mondays, one more little piece of information as far as what's going on, that you need to put under your belt as a metrologist. So yeah, you said starting this third-party calibration labs. Why are you not coming out to here? Because this is the best training you're going to get for the dollar. When you start looking at these, you can come out here and get training from NIST people on mass. And you're just not going to get to a better level of the bottom of the pyramid, middle of the pyramid, top of the pyramid, understanding that whole setup on mass. You're just not going to get better training than sitting down with the people at NIST that are doing mass every day.
Well, sorry, Henry.
No,
go ahead.
I was going to say, so yeah, if you're only a mass lab, you can take a course at NIST. Though if you're doing anything more than just mass, then you could send somebody out, and you have the multiple days of tutorials where some of them run all day, some of them run 4 hours. If you're there, you could maximize things and take maybe 4 classes on different parameters. Maybe you need something on decision risk. Colin Delker from Sandia National Labs, who wrote SunCal, is going to be out there. Greg Senker and I are teaching decision rules. Maybe you need something on measurement uncertainty. Well, Colin's doing that the day. Mike Lynn, there's macros, QI macros, this really powerful statistical tool that you could use in Excel instead of somebody getting I read the gentleman's book, and it's Alva, I forget his full name, excuse me, though his book was so good. And for a greenbelt class, it takes you 2 weeks for a 6 Sigma greenbelt, and he says I could teach you that in 4 hours, how to use the QI macros. And if you think about the statistical and sampling and everything, how it could benefit your lab, your techs, they go out and learn these cool tools, they're going to come back and make your company better. So that's Mike, Brian, just
well, and if any of this stuff sounds like French or a foreign language, or you're not exactly sure how is a macro going to help us or whatever, these are things we're teaching in the schools. And like when people get up into higher level temperature with us, they have ITS 90 macros and stuff. This is the future, people. If you're staying, like I said, insulated at your labs, and you're not getting out there and seeing what the newest things are, you're not hearing about the digital transformation in metrology, and you're not hearing about sorry, Mike, it always skips my head. What are those called? The competencies, or the measurement, the individual measurement ones that you're working with, that international.
So you mean like the metrology taxonomies?
The taxonomy. See, that taxonomy word always gets me.
AI stuff.
Like, how do you know what's going on with all this stuff? Or like the NIST.
The NIST Kibble principles, that's going to rechange everything mass, torque, force related at the low end. It's really cool stuff.
Unfortunately, our job, right? I almost said MOS because that's I harken back to the good old days, but in the military. But our job, when I go out and teach new students, and I'm teaching in person, I tell people, you have to get on LinkedIn. You have to, we're a little bit different than you have to get outside your comfort zone a little bit, because information doesn't flow the way it does in larger industries. You have to, if you want to catch that decision risk, that awesome decision risk guidance that Henry and Greg Senker, Dilip Shah put out, you might not know about it unless you're on LinkedIn, right? Or I guess Facebook to a certain extent, but I think people are getting a little burned out of some of those Facebook groups. But the point is, you have to get out there, especially, and I see it a lot with managers. They're like, well, how can I learn, what can I do to improve? And it's like, get out there and talk with other managers at these conferences, and pop your head into some of these advanced classes, and they're going to sound way complicated at first, but once you start to get used to these circles, you'll start to get comfortable.
Yep. And you're not always networking with that guy that's above you, right? Nope. So you're not always networking with that expert. You're also networking with your peers, right? And sometimes it's hard to get an expert on the phone or something. But when you have that peer, in another lab, and you guys set through this class together, and then you got a question later. If you've got the contacts from the class, made a friend, made two friends in the class. Now you've got those peers that you can reach out to and say, hey, I ran into this problem. What do you think? And a lot of times you can get good advice from your peers, your classmates, along with the people that are teachers and in other areas of metrology. You're just going to meet these people at the shows, and you might meet five going to the show the first time, and then you meet five more the next time, and then you meet five more the next time. And after you've gone a few times, you have a nice network of people you can reach out to when you have a problem. Typically, when I go to the show, I'll meet somebody, and then either I'll come back or they'll come back and find me on LinkedIn. So now I've got that person on LinkedIn, and 90% of the time, I can just direct message them on LinkedIn if I have a question about something.
Yep. And to further that point, when you're talking in the classes, typically people will say, hey, well, how do you do this? And someone will volunteer something. I mean, last year I take classes when I'm not giving the tutorials. And last year I took Rob Kanaki's and Andy Obershall's class on risk-based thinking. And I had like 3 or 4 great takeaways to come back, and we implemented about 2 of them in the lab. 2 of them were very practical and inexpensive to implement that made a lot of sense. And the other 2 that I wrote were kind of really higher price that's didn't make that much sense for any return. But those 2 that we implemented were huge. So there, as far as risk-based thinking and how it goes.
See, I love that, Henry. I say that all the time. Like, I am constantly still learning things in this industry. Henry's written a lot of papers, is well known for his knowledge and stuff. Guess what? We're all still learning. Like,
all the time.
if you think you're above going to the conferences, like, oh, we won't get anything out of this. It's a little bit unrealistic. Like there's a lot of things and it's always changing.
I was shaking my head a minute ago when Henry said Mike knows. I was like, no, I don't. But I know somebody who knows, and I can call him.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it's about, establishing those people. I mean, we get it all the time. Is this a good? I get those questions all the time. Someone comes to the class and then they say, hey, I ran into this issue. And it's like, okay, here's a paper on it. Here's a direction. Here's who you should call. It's, they get into those situations all the time. Can you recommend a good torque? We do nothing on torque wrenches. Can you recommend a good torque wrench manufacturer? Yeah, just from talking to people, you start knowing the names of what not to buy, and then you sort of filter a list of like the 3 or 4 and their, the various differences to make the decision. But if you buy one of the not to buys, guess what? It's probably going to be out of Cal. You're going to spend a lot more money. There's a very good argument to you come to these events. They do cost money to save money, and I think they're worth a lot more than the professional business coaches, because I constant training in I have a business coach as part of a group, but the professional ones that come out and like teach a full day class are charging 8 to 10 grand. We don't do that. I mean, our business, but that's what they're costing for like big companies to come out and do things. On the metrology side, it's a lot less expensive. You can hire somebody that can help you out probably for like $2,000, $2,500 a day plus travel. It's still a lot of money. Whereas if you say, hey, at this conference, I can go, I can meet all these people, I can network. I probably don't need to spend that type and have those really seasoned people out there. And the seasoned people are only going to solve the problem that you present them with. Typically, like, I have bad measurements here and I need to help here. And the whole organization, it takes a long time to rebuild the whole organization to a quality organization where all the measurements and you have confidence in your system, safeguards, you're doing risk analysis right, and everything else. I think we're all always evolving to be better in that. But if you're not going, you're probably not even starting the evolution of to get better.
They're running their lab and they probably feel like their hair is on fire and everything's going a million miles an hour, Henry.
Yep.
If they're outside of the circles, and again, it's not there's just a lot of things that go into running. a successful cal lab in the proper way, right? Because we always have those. What's the one that you use for a joke cal lab, Mike?
Oh yeah. Trailer park metrology.
Trailer park metrology, like the lick 'em and stick 'em, they're still out there, they're still making money, they're still doing it, and it's just because the services, I think certain industries or certain places that maybe don't value or understand the measurements that they're getting.
They have
But
no idea. The other day we
yeah,
just got one, said I need a 4-to-1 measurement. Well, I said, okay, so you submitted something without a tolerance. What's the tolerance? Just whatever you can give me that gives me a 4-to-1 measurement. I said, okay. So that is a clear not understanding the system, because I have some type of requirement. It's 4-to-1, but you're going to raise your tolerance. So that's going to raise, if people understand that, that tolerance is going to be like the best you could theoretically get. You're going to have to take the reference standard uncertainty into account and everything else with it. Most people don't know that. This person, just make sure the cert says 4-to-1. So yeah, your tolerance may not be good enough for what you're actually calibrating, but you know nothing of that, because all that technician knew, the person, our contact, was that everything needed to be 4-to-1. And we tried to have the whole explanation and start it going and starting the stuff. So there's a lot to learn there.
well, Henry, the one that makes me shudder is how many people are out there as on-site technicians, like advising customers in their facilities, that them themselves don't understand what they're talking about. The technician might understand, hey, how do I test the pressure um, device or a
Right.
transducer or whatever? They understand the method to test that, but not where they're at, the uncertainties involved, or maybe the
Or
risks, right? That
or
that
how they're
customer might
storing their
have.
adapters, putting all the adapters in the same bag and then getting them not smooth and with a
Oh
good
yeah.
finish,
Or
because they're
when I had a guy hooking up
wearing.
a water pump to an oil test stand, and luckily
Yeah.
the
What's
customer
wrong with
stopped
that,
him.
Ryan? I don't.
Oil and water, they're friends.
Yeah.
But
they,
anyway,
they they part ways, don't they?
yeah,
They split.
we're losing the battle right now as an
Yes,
industry of what we're
big time.
expelling good technicians and not getting a lot back in. And the school, I mean, we're as busy as ever, but it's hard to replace what we used to be as an industry, right? And in a lot of ways, companies are going to have to get outside the norm and say, hey, we need to start getting some of these, I say like the lead and the management. I understand it being difficult to get that brand new technician out to an MSc and CSLI. I'm going to be realistic on that. But
It's
someone
hard.
that's been around for a minute and then your managers, I talk to lab managers all the time. I'm like, get yourself out there. You haven't ever been, and your lab has been running for 20 years, just how it is. Like, start
Oh,
making some improvements.
there's so many cost savings there, right? You figure
Hmm.
something out that's now you can automate. Now you figure something out that has half the uncertainty that and now if you have half the uncertainty, now you have wider tolerance, so you can pass more instruments and not have to do as much rework. There's so many, just good things out there to learn to improve your lab, improve your measurements, improve your quality, and learn. There's also some soft classes about management and stuff that you go in, you can talk
Yeah.
to people about. Everybody has the same problem. We're not,
There's a
um,
statistics classes in there. I
yeah.
thought I saw on the schedule. I mean, that's one that I get requests all the time. Like, hey, can Sign put a statistics class in? And I'm working with Greg Sanker on that. But there are people out there teaching that stuff, and you have that opportunity. It is there.
there's
And then
there's a lot.
you get the material also to bring back, because most of the classes, they're going to give you their slide presentation, they're going to give you your material. So now you can bring that back, and now you can train the technicians inside of your lab, over the course of the year, over a period
Mhm.
of time. You can train them on the majority of that knowledge that you've brought back from the trade show.
Or
So
yep. Or you get a new tool. I know in our classes we give out Excel sheet. We're going to have Excel sheets for risk calculation. And Greg Senker and I have worked on them. Greg's done a lot of work on global
Yep.
risk. That's a really hard calculation. So go try to do that in Excel and see where you get. We're going to give you those tools. You can go back, you can copy them. The code's going to be there. You can copy them, put them into your stuff. So there's a lot of value add. probably have, if you paid somebody to program that stuff, you'd probably have 40 to 80 hours at least for them to try to figure it out, do it. And then they probably wouldn't check it against, the programs that are out there, like Howard Kastrup's Risk Guard and Colin Delker's SunCal. Both of those are the way we kind of prove a lot of the formulas, because, and yeah, the early years of NCSLI through, and it's been around for over 50 years, and just, yeah, meeting people. Last time we were out there, a bunch of us nerded out for a long time on various different topics, and kept talking and talking and talking and talking, and went home with a lot more knowledge. And we ended up writing the decision rules book because the lack of knowledge with talking to people that are out there that are having a struggle with it. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, and speaking of which, with the social aspect, Mike, isn't there some also outside of the learning some social things going on? Do you want to mention some of those
Yeah,
things?
there's a lot of social things going on too. So we started years ago this metrology on tap, right? And really what it was is it was us smaller businesses, right, who can't afford to go out and get a suite and invite everybody up to their suite, and all these things. We smaller businesses, we wanted to come up with a way we could do our own networking thing. So we started metrology on tap in Washington, D.C., invited everybody over for beer. Now we've upgraded it to beer and pizza, but we have Tuesday night is going to be metrology on tap. And those people going to the show, there'll be a bus going back and forth every 15 minutes. And what we like to do is find a local small business brewery and come in there, and we're going to buy beers for everybody who comes in and gets a wrist strap. And then we're going to order pizza from the local pizzeria. So again, supporting the small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then just invite everybody. So everybody's invited to come over and, have a beer, network with people, talk metrology.
It's
Last year,
fun.
people were singing karaoke.
Yeah.
Oh,
I still
yeah.
got the Rob Kaneki doing came in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Well, and we're gonna try and have the podcast there. We've had it at Metrology on Tap before, and that's a
Yep.
lot of fun. And I don't drink, and it's still a good time, even if you come out, have some pizza, and get a chance to chat with everyone with their, the with the hair down, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a fantastic chance to, uh, yeah, get that lighter side of things, I guess you'd say.
It's
Yep.
fun.
It's
It,
one of
it
our
met a
most
lot of people.
popular. It's one of our most popular episodes. They want to go in there and hear us all yapping about at that. What was that brewery called? I forget that which
Oh
one
man,
that
I
was.
can't remember. I'd have to look up the name of the brewery, but that one was a really good one because
Yep.
we were in there doing the podcast and everybody was coming up to the people at the brewery saying, I want a tour, I want a tour, I want a tour. So the assistant manager is like, okay, we're gonna start giving tours. And then everybody lined up for the tour. And he's like, okay, we gotta divide this up into groups. So
Nice.
And on the podcast side, we had so many seasoned metrologists come on and talk about their experiences from using a
Mhm.
large micrometer as a C clamp and breaking it to really some other good things. If people want to go back and listen to that, it's still posted, and
Yep.
I was getting a little tipsy during it, but it was fun. And
Yeah, that was part of the
were our
fun.
guests, and so were our guests.
So
Then you get the real stories about how I overloaded this or how I broke this. Everybody in their metrology career makes a mistake, and when we all talk about it, it's also what I wanted to say. It's kind of, you're probably pretty isolated if you're in metrology. You have your coworkers, you come home, your spouse probably doesn't understand it. Your friends probably do, like, oh, I'm in the science of measurement. Oh, cool. Let's go out and
nerd.
drink or nerd or whatever. Yeah. So it's like-minded people, and it's kind of like almost like therapy for other like-minded people, where you can go out and you can express yourself and have these discussions, because your social groups, likely, if they're outside of work, are not all metrology all the time, and if they are, they're usually just focused on one thing or one parameter, or they get, yeah. So
I
anyway.
love that, Henry. Yeah, because this is the one place, if you've had these thoughts, these metrology thoughts just pent up in your head and you want to just blurt them out and people don't look at you crazy, this is the place you can do that.
Yeah.
When
People
we
speak
were
the
up
same
in
language.
when we were up in Cleveland, we were at another bar, it wasn't a metrology on tap thing. And David looked at me and he goes, "Did you really just get two gals to come over here, two lawyers to come over here and talk to us about metrology?" And I looked at him and said, "Well, they really want us to buy them drinks, but yes."
Yeah.
But you can also make metrology interesting. There's a lot of things that people don't know about metrology as far back in history that it goes. For instance, your rings. So I'm sure if anybody's married out there, their spouse has a ring, and on that ring, there's some kind of a diamond, right? Some kind of a gemstone. And
Hmm.
that gemstone is measured in carats. Well, carats date back to the carob seed. And what would happen with the carob seed is if you gave a carob plant more nutrition and more water, it didn't make a heavier seed, it just made more seeds. So the carob seed was always consistent in its weight. So that's how people would exchange gemstones, is they would compare it to the carob seed, and you would literally have a 1 carob or 2 carob gemstone. And that's what we do today when we have carats, is we'll grade our gems still based on a seed from 10,000 years ago.
If you're watching the video of this, you probably just saw me run in the background. The reason I did is I actually have carob seeds here at the school, but I couldn't find them in enough time. But yeah,
Sweet.
that was something that we were gonna
Yeah, some
cover in a
barley
future
corn
video
too.
someday.
Get some fathoms.
So
Measure
one
some
year at
fathoms.
NIST, we had calibrated carob seeds we gave out.
Well,
So
yeah,
at MSC, we had NIST calibrated carob seeds. It was one of the top prizes that we gave out to people.
The shot glass from
Mhm.
NRC Canada, where they did all the measurements on, was my favorite thing that was given out.
Oh
No,
yeah,
it's
didn't you
fun.
give out one like that? Or no, you had a
Now we just had the
measuring
beer
little thing.
beer gauges. We
Yeah,
had
yeah,
beer
yeah. The
gauges.
beer gauges.
Beer gauges is something I can bring some of those
Oh
I
yeah,
to.
there
have,
you go.
Yeah,
yeah,
there.
I have
Mike has
my
the A2LA one.
A2LA. Yeah,
That
and then on the
boo.
back, it shows you if somebody short poured you. I don't know if that
Yeah.
zooms in
Yeah,
with you.
you
You
can
see
you can
that.
kind of see it. But there's things, and people, you get tchotchkes and whatnot. It's people give out other things. Though I did want to say that some of the accreditation bodies are there. So for those labs that are accredited, or not, the ones that are not accredited, they will talk to you all day long about what you need to do, and you can get just
If you
hints
want
and
to pin
tips.
him
If
down and talk to him all
Yeah,
day.
it's see what makes sense. I mean, they're there. Look, booth workers, it's a lonely job. One time, the guy from NIST, Ted Dorian, was like, "What do you?" I love Ted. What are you doing? He's like, "I'm just looking at everybody and seeing how many people look away. I'm doing a statistical analysis of that they don't want to come talk to me." So that was Ted. But when you're at the booth, like, there's people that are there that they're stuck. I mean, they're supposed to be there for 8 hours in the day, and speaking as a booth worker that I usually am, you just welcome somebody to come talk to you, because it passes the day.
Hmm.
Whatever knowledge you can impart, however you can help them at that point in time, is certainly better than sitting there staring and watching people look away.
Definitely do not hesitate to talk to a booth person. And I will say, if Ted Dorian does the booth again, I will definitely stop and talk to him.
He's
That
retired now.
I
He's
know,
with
but
us.
he's a
Yeah.
rock star of metrology. I would talk to him for hours about his gauge block handbook and all that.
He knows. Yeah, he's so knowledgeable. And there's so many people out there that are so knowledgeable that can help you be better.
Now, one thing I did want to bring up, now there's also lunches that some of my most surprising, like the my favorite parts of some of these conferences are the keynote speakers at the lunches, because like the one where it was like the LA weights and metrology, weights and measures,
Mhm.
the guy that runs that was so fascinating. Do you mind covering some of the guest speakers for the week there, Mike?
Oh man, I do not know who the guest speakers.
Oh, I thought we had a list of those. My bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd have to go find them on the website.
There's a lot of speakers the whole way through. Like, I'm giving two classes or two sessions. Midatoya is giving a bunch of sessions. Greg Senker's giving a session, Colin's giving sessions.
No, I
There's
mean at the
lots of,
lunch.
I
The
know what you're talking, I know
oh yeah,
exactly what you're
yeah.
talking about, but
Okay.
I'm just saying on the sessions. There's also every day at the beginning, it kicks off with, that's where you get your guest speakers. There's a, during lunch, they typically, NCSLI does not have speakers. So they have speakers that kick off the show. They have speakers to close the show. We've had all kinds of awesome speakers throughout the years. They're always
Mm.
pretty relevant to what it is. I mean, now it's a focus on critical and emerging technologies. So the speakers are typically going to speak about that. We had speakers from Boeing talk about how they test airplanes. That was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen because I don't like flying. I have this a little bit fear of like what's going on because I'm not in control
Right.
a bit. And then the turns and the bumps and all this, like what is that? And he was just explaining everything. And now I mind it a lot less after attending that lecture and how much testing the planes actually go through and stuff. Really cool stuff. Awesome. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
on the website. You can go to the website. I don't know if NCSLI has the it should be in the conference.
Yeah, I
Well,
couldn't
I just
find
wanted
a.
to mention it.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah,
some
they
of
have
my
awesome
favorite
ones. Yep,
parts.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah. It's usually in the conference program that came out via email, though. There's a lot. There's learning labs. There's the talking to people at the booths. They're sitting with people at lunch and just general casual conversation about like what do you do, what are you in, learning about other fields. If your lab wants to expand, say you're doing like us, force and torque, and you wanted to expand the pressure, well, the pressure Adatel's there. It's like experts are there. You can go talk to them, see what's needed, see if you really want to make that expansion, see if it makes sense. You've probably already
Hmm.
done some research on the customer base and the potential ask. So what do I need to buy? What are the best things? If I'm going into this blind, I'm probably going to make mistakes. Where if you talk to people, they'll guide you through things. So just really good experience.
Yep. And there's a don't do, right, that I tell all of my people to not do when they're at the shows. When you go to these lunches, you're going to have a tendency you want to sit next to somebody you work with.
Yeah,
So
all
you
your
go over
buddies.
to a table and it's, half of the people at one company. Don't
Yep.
don't do that. Go sit at a table with people you've never seen before. Introduce yourself. You're
Yep.
gonna you're gonna meet at that table 8 to 10 new people that you may have something in common with, or you may not, but you already know all your coworkers, so don't go sit at the same table with your coworkers. And I know it's rough to do, but get out of that comfort zone and really network with people.
Or split it. So just two of you
Yep.
go to one. If you're an introvert, extreme introvert, which some people are, just
Come find
go,
Mike.
go with the extrovert and two of you sit at one table and split up and then ask some questions and just sit there and listen and take notes because people will be talking metrology.
You can
That's
definitely come and find me, and I'll introduce you to people. But I don't know half the people that Henry and Mike do. So if you need to be introduced to people, flag one of them down.
Yep. And then there's also, we didn't hit the committee meetings.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Those are
NCSA,
Monday. Yep.
yep, has a lot of committee meetings, and you can come in and by attending the show, you can come in and sit in the committee meetings. And again, meet more people, find out what's going on with these recommended practices and other things.
Yeah,
So a
do you mind going
quick
into
rundown on those.
yeah,
We have the
on what
airline
those are?
committee, calibration resource committee. They're about an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting with like-minded people that are interested, like the airline and aerospace. They were talking about problems with cable tensiometers. They were talking about other problems that face the industry. Calibration Resources Committee, Z540 Committee, Accreditation Resources Committee, Metrology Practices, Legal Metrology Committee, Peer Review of LM20, that's probably Automotive Committee, Healthcare Committee, Energy and Renewable Metrology, ACDC Committee, Dimensional Metrology, Measurement Comparison Program. So how do you know, the big thing here is how do you know your measurements are good? most labs just are siloed, right? And you never know. You need to prove them out somehow by either the expensive way, sending an artifact to NIST and then testing it at your own lab when it comes back with your standards, or meet people that are doing PTs, and the PT companies like NAPT will be there, and some of the other ones that you can sign up for a PT. You could get the PT, you could kind of prove out, test your Z-score, EN ratios, all this stuff. I know I'm speaking over the head. So it's just, there's a lot there, and I'm sure people, if you're in healthcare, dimensional, ACDC, energy, airline, any of that, there's just general
Or if
metrology,
you're
you just know a ton
servicing
of names.
these
Yep.
customers, I mean,
Yeah, attend it, see what their
you know,
problems
if
are.
your lab, like I keep stressing about these third party cal labs. I've worked third party cal labs. There, you cover such a wide gambit of different areas of metrology, different customers, different customer requirements. I mean, and that's what I like about the conferences. You get a lot of biomedical out there too, and I know
Yep.
all of you out there are always asking me biomedical stuff, and we try and help as a school, but like that is a very popular field. Some of the experts out there that are advising everybody on both sides are there, you know. So yeah, just can't stress that enough.
I think we got most of it. I mean, for those that are on the fence, curious about it, if it's too late, get next year's date. Next year will be in Cleveland. Get next year on the calendar. If you can swing it this year, try to. If you're out there anyway, look at the tutorial program, see what's there. There's several. There's a force dimensional risk, as I said. I'll be out there doing two. I'll do one force one on Saturday, and then one risk one on Sunday. The sessions, there's multiple people in the various sessions giving different presentation. I'm giving one on cable tensiometers. I know that not many people are probably measuring cable tensiometers, but found out a lot of different things about different length of cable makes a difference, type of cable makes a difference, the tensiometer, the method, whether you have two fixed points, one fixed points, all makes a huge difference. So you can check that stuff out. And people are just presenting various things like that, where they take a measurement and they found better ways to do it, or they have tips on how to make the measurement better, and they show you the statistics behind it.
Yep.
Yeah, and this year, one of the big changes is going to be there's a full day workshop on digitizing metrology.
Yep.
So that's one of the things NCSL has been heavily involved in, and I have with the whole metrology taxonomy and some other things. But I remember back in 2001, I think it was, I submitted a paper to NCSL talking about how to create an XML standard for exchanging data between different systems, right? You know, and it was kind of aimed at that certificate of calibration, that you could get an XML file or you could get a data file and be able to automatically import it into your systems or export it to where your customers could automatically import this data format. And I remember that I got denied the paper. So I talked to a friend of mine, Carl Haynes, and I said, Carl, what happened? And he said, look, Carl, and actually Carl told me this, and Dilip Shaw told me this. He goes, look, you got to have some of these keywords in there, like measurement uncertainty and risk, and you know, all of these things are in the paper. So you submitted a paper that didn't have these keywords in it. So the people that are reviewing the papers, they don't think it applies. They think you're just trying to come in and sell your services as opposed to providing content back to the show. So my next paper had, you know, measurement uncertainty in it for sure. A2LA's requirements now for
R205. Yep.
So that was what I put in my paper. That one got accepted, and I kind of watched the digital stuff, you know, kind of fall to the wayside. But me as a computer guy sitting back here saying, why do these people not get, you know, the importance of computer systems and digital exchanges and things that are going on? So now there's actually with NIST and CPIM and Ryan White's the chair of this, there's actually a full day dedicated to metrology digitization workshop.
Yep. And it's going that way. NIST on a chip. It's going, they look up NIST on a chip. They're looking at doing all kinds of, we're part of all kinds of crazy research that we come across between the kibble, between using diamond powder and all this other stuff for different measurements. There's a lot of stuff out there that's going to change the way we make measurements and how we
I was having a conversation with one of my friends slash customers yesterday, and he's like, "Oh my God, Mike, I never thought about this."
Yep.
But he works in a manufacturing line, right? And they manufacture products. So they come up with a new product they want to build. The engineers come up with what the product's going to do and how they're going to test it. Imagine living in a world where they could take their data points that they want to test and they can kick it into a database. And this database can come out and tell them all the test equipment that can test that and meet their risk requirements.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? And automatically just tell them, you have these things on this production line that you're shutting down. You could move these items over here and buy these new three items, and now you can test your devices and save you money. That's where we're going to be in 10 years, I would think.
I argue we should have been there already.
Yes.
But how small we are. Again, it
Oh
really
my.
slows
Yep.
down the
Yep.
movement of all this stuff when we're so small, so insulated, just as a whole industry. It's not any one person's fault or one company, but I'm just saying, as a whole, we just move so slowly because we're so small, even though our impact is huge. It's
It's
a
hard.
really weird thing.
I'll tell you, like Mike just made me cringe a little bit on this because I remember testing everything manually. And when you test everything manually as a tech, it takes time and time, and you are so bored at the end of this. I got to do what? I got to tweak this, make this measurement, tweak that, do this. Well, if I use this bearing here, then it does this, and it's just on and on. When you start coming up with automated and data capture and everything else, now you just do the setup, let the test run, go back. Okay, and then I'm going to vary this, and then you go do something else while the test is running. It's night and day when you have the automated systems and can test different adapters and different influences of maybe with Mike's world, maybe different cable leads. Like, hey, I want to test these ultra high end cable leads versus the normal run of the mill that I'm using, right? And then you know how long that takes as a tech and how many samples, and but if you can automate it, and you can automate it.
Here's the scenario. As we move into big data,
yep,
you don't have to do that. You would have 5 or 10 other companies that
have done it. Yep.
Right. And now you can reach out to their data samples and say, hey, does this cable setup improve my processes or not? You'll be able to share this data, these massive amounts of data that we'll be able to share.
Yep. Yep. And then you know what to put in your product. So on the design side of things, it's like, okay, now I found that's another piece that we're not talking about, but we can. If you're a design engineer, a company that's making stuff, figure out how to measure it, how to test it. It's going to save you a lot of time than the just trial and error method. People will get you a lot further faster by talking to the people at these shows and what works and how to do it.
Yep, that's another one that's coming down with that trial and error is they're talking about doing digital twins. So you have your 3458, but then you have this digital twin of a population of 3458s.
Yep.
The people have gathered data on. So now you could grab that piece of data and say, hey, if I put this 3458 in a room that's, 10 degrees C higher than its normal operating, how is it going to behave? Well, somebody may have that in a digital twin of that. So we know what it's going to be able to do in these things.
Yep. We can anticipate what the contributions to the uncertainty and what the contributions to our measurements are going to be from that data. And
then people can publish papers telling people about those contributors. See how it's a full circle, but none of this exists if you people don't go out to the conferences.
Look, it's all about reliability. At the end of the day, it's all about, hey, I want to buy good equipment that functions so I can make, if you're the commercial lab we're talking about, I can perform calibrations and I'm not going to get bit in a year or whenever, 6 months or 2, whenever the recalibration interval where I have to recall all of it because the reliability was not what I needed it to be, or my measurement uncertainty wasn't what I claimed it was, and found out that through PT that it's actually higher and I haven't fixed my problem. It goes on and on and on. So you can save it just a ton of money if you learn to evaluate your risk, and by talking to people, they'll steer you in the right direction on what equipment to buy, how to use that equipment, and mitigate your risk. You're never going to get perfection, but you can certainly get better. That we can, I think the three of us can guarantee you can certainly get better than you are today, unless you're an NMI, by attending these shows. And even NMIs can get better by actually listening to the voice of their customers and what our challenges are, because they're on some of the higher committees that dictate these standards sometimes. So it works.
This year it's mixed with CPIM, so NCSL and CPIM are together. So you're going to have a lot of electrical NMIs out at the show.
Yep.
So
a
if
lot
you're
of
in,
info out there.
yeah, so if you're in electrical metrology, this is a great time to reach out there and see, you know, what the rest of the world is doing in metrology as well.
Just awesome. Cannot stress enough that if you're thinking about it, put it on, get it on your calendar. If not this year, next year. Hopefully you can make it to Denver this year. If you can't, look at what's coming up next year for NCSLI in Cleveland.
Well, Henry and Mike, we're getting close to the end of the show.
Yep.
I did want to mention right here at the end, because it just dawned on me, you know, if someone was listening to this, it sounds like we have a lot of passion for these conferences, and I just want to make sure to note, like, and be clear, we don't get paid to go to these things.
No,
like, we all pay
or
to
give
go to
classes.
them. Right.
When you give a class, people say, you're making a lot of money. You got 20 people in that class. We make zero. It's all volunteer.
It's all volunteer and everything.
Yeah.
So we just actually care about, and, you know, as a school, obviously I started the school to help the industry, but I feel like these things also are there as tools. We need as much help as we can get. And so we're just all really advocates of this stuff. So there's nothing in it for us outside of that.
We don't want it to die, is what
Right.
it amounts to, because attendance at conferences and at many of the conferences is lower. And what happens when people no longer attend? Now we lose that network, and we're going to have to find another way to get it. So I think the passion, at least on my end, coming from today, reaching out to people, is to say, let's not let this stuff die. Let's get people out there. Let's, as a community, measurement community, metrology community, let's all get together and say these things are worthwhile. There are several things in life that probably are not worthwhile that you just do, or that your companies think they have to do. This is one that I think the three of us all put high on our list. This is something that everyone should be doing, because we all should be discussing these topics, because that's how we all get better together. And we learn, the people that ask us questions as quote experts. I never think of an expert, doing it for 25 years, still don't think of an expert status, but you learn from people asking you questions. And okay, yeah, never heard of that one. Let's go research it. Let's talk to other people. Let's do this. And then you learn about other people's problems. And we all work together to try to find a solution.
Absolutely. Mike, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna second that, and also add to it that, you know, if you're an expert in a particular area of metrology, or you're just highly knowledgeable and don't consider yourself an expert, you know, there's a great opportunity for you to pass along a lot of that information at these shows. It's really not that hard to, you know, to put together a 4-hour slide deck.
Nope.
You know, grab some test equipment, you know, come in and do a tutorial to, you know, teach 5 or 10 students, you know, some of the details that's in your head, you know, and then, you know, give back to the community that way.
The future of metrology literally lies in many of your hands out there that are listening. If you're an expert or you have knowledge that can be passed on, there is a possibility something, you know, will never be taught again unless you teach it.
Write a paper.
Write a paper. Yeah, if you don't want to teach, write a paper.
So to use an Army example, right? After World War II, the Army cut their sniper program, just completely got rid of it. And then when they needed snipers in the Vietnam era, they had no way to get those programs going, because there was nobody around who were snipers. So metrology is going to have something very similar to that we are going to lose our ability, and we're going to have to go back and figure out all of these things that metrologists figured out before, if we don't pass these little tidbits of information down.
Hey,
and guess what? The world's growing. The population is typically growing. Everybody wants to sell more of their tchotchkes, for lack of a better word. I think everybody knows what I mean. They want to sell more cars, more equipment. All that stuff has measurement attached to it.
Yep. You rely on it every day of your life.
Yep.
A hypothetical is the batteries, right?
Yep.
You can't check something with the battery on an airline because it might blow up, right? Might catch fire on the aircraft.
Yep.
So what if that was at the root cause of it, just a measurement problem? That those people weren't paying attention to measurements and they manufactured bad product, and now those bad products started catching fires, right? What if that's the
Big
root cause
problem.
of it?
Look at the Titan sub was another huge problem. The measurement problems
Yep.
galore. If you want to read, I think
Oh, yeah.
Popular Mechanics or Popular Science has a new one. It's, if anybody's out there, that's my recommend. Besides going to the show, my recommended reading is What Not to Do, the story of the Titan sub. It's boy, oh boy, did someone push. But that happens to measurements all the time. It's just we don't catch it. The consequences, you do not see the catastrophic consequences because you make
Right.
your people or you make a measurement, and then it's, you say something's good when it's bad, and then hopefully they have the appropriate risk level to cover it. But some of these measurements actually cost a lot of money in recalls or a lot of money in just malfunctioning parts, and sometimes loss of life, which shouldn't
Yeah.
really never happen.
Sadly, redundancy is, like, engineers putting redundancy in is sometimes what saves people from measurement mistakes,
Yep.
quite literally.
Yeah,
Well, gentlemen, oh,
we can
sorry,
think
go
of
ahead.
something that didn't have redundancy in it that caused the problem in the recent history. But yeah, I agree. Redundancy.
Well, gentlemen, thank you once again for coming on. All of you out there, if you represent a lab, get someone from your lab to the conferences. Get yourself to conferences. You can always pay for yourself to go. I do have people that I recommend that too, that they can't get their company to budge unless they front it. Sometimes I think that is unfortunate, but we have to take our own careers into our own hands sometimes in metrology, unfortunately. How can people reach you, Mike? What's the best way for people to reach you?
So, well, CalLabSolutions.com is an easy way to reach me. And then I was going to say, I'm going to be at the show. So, drop by the booth if you're there.
For the fedora.
Ask him how his walk by, and if you don't want to talk to him, just yell at him, "May the Schwartz be with you,"
Isn't there a
as you
fedora
walk
rule?
by.
If the fedora is around, you're around somewhere or
Yeah,
something?
there's a rule that if the fedora is at the booth, I'm on the floor somewhere. So I'll hang it in my booth. So if you see my hat, I'm on the floor somewhere. I haven't left the building.
Everybody took
Awesome.
pictures in your booth that one year that he was gone, and people were taking pictures in his booth. So fun time once you get to know everybody. So.
Yes. Well, thank you all for listening, and see you at the conference.